Hello, everyone. Welcome to Self Love You. I'm Jenna Ryan, your self love life coach. I wanted to talk to you today about victim mentality and overcoming a can't do attitude. So, victim mentality, learned helplessness, and overcoming just the feeling of defeat, like you cannot do it, like you can't get over the hump. And I've got a lot of information to share with you on this topic. And before I do that, I'm just going to tell you, you guys, yes, I am going through a lot of stuff, in the media. If you'll look at the media, you can look at any time and say, woo, I'm hot right now. I am super hot as far as the media goes. But anyway, don't worry about me, because what you're going to see through this process is how I'm able to turn around the negative situation and turn it into a positive for myself and for those who are watching me and cheering me on. So you're going to see how someone is able to soar despite circumstances and despite smear campaigns and despite being severely punished for protesting. So, but that's not what this podcast is about. This is serious, y'all. This is about you. If you are recovering from childhood trauma or just a childhood where you did not get the proper training, the proper mirroring, the proper understanding of you, who you are, and your capabilities. It's also for you if you have been downtrodden, if you've gone through a lot, and you may have what do they call it? A generational, mindset of victim mentality, learned helplessness. This is a very natural state of being for someone who is not self-actualized. It's a schema, like a negative schema, a negative core belief schema that can cause you to feel like you're incompetent, you can't, it's impossible. And if you have endured trauma, this is a natural state of being. It doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. It just means that your mind is working the way it's supposed to. The mind takes the path of least resistance in order to help you to develop and mature. And unfortunately, the things that help you to develop and mature in childhood development are not necessarily the things that help you excel later in life. So when we do become aware of what's going on inside and we listen to our self-talk and we begin to wrestle and argue with our inner critic, and we begin to integrate some of the broken parts of ourselves, and we begin to understand a little bit more about our belief systems and what has caused us to believe what we believe, and we do the grief work, and we do all the work that we need to do to heal along the spiral. Along the way, you will find that there is a prevalent feeling. It has a lot to do with the toxic shame. There's a prevalent feeling of learned helplessness. Now, I'm not a therapist, but I've studied this extensively in order to get myself out. And learned helplessness is basically the mindset and the experience of giving up before you begin. Of just, it's a defeatism, it's just a defeatist feeling, and you cannot help it. It literally lingers. I know it. I can just envision it in my mind. It's just basically like I think it's an introject that you develop psychologically that is like an inner critic that is actually trying to protect you from being hurt, from putting yourself out there, from getting your hopes up, and kind of keep you inside the box, keep you inside of where you're supposed to be, which is less than, if that's what was needed in your family, if they needed you to be the scapegoat, if they needed you to be the parent, if they needed you to take care of them, then you may have learned to turn down parts of yourself that are achievement oriented, production oriented, and problem solving oriented in order to meet the needs of others. This could have been for a whole bunch of reasons. Just could have been because, you had a traumatic situation, and as a child, if you had a parent die, then it may not have made sense to you. So you may have not been able to handle the grief, and you may have sunk into helplessness, learned helplessness, hopelessness, just in trying to resolve the grief, because children don't really have the capacity to fully process emotions and trauma. And so this, any kind of traumatic event in childhood, and it's different for every person, can leave you with this incompetency schema. And this incompetency schema can infiltrate your entire life in various ways. It can mean that you feel you're always incompetent in relationships. It can really hit you in the work area, in your career. You may always go for jobs that are less than your capacity, than your capability. You may have a dull ambition. You may turn to drugs. You may not have ambition. You may not want to try because you're afraid that if you do, or you have all these limiting beliefs that are keeping you stuck in your career, and you're underemployed, or something of that nature, because you just don't feel that you have what it takes, because you were not validated properly somewhere along the way. And so if we know that, well, first you have to become aware. You have to become aware of your thoughts and listen to yourself very carefully. And then, so you have to really become aware. Meditation helps. But also self-discovery, journaling and stuff. And so you also need a higher self within. I'm not talking new age, I'm talking higher self within. This is what everybody has that is normally developed, but you may be underdeveloped in this particular area. So this is just a higher thought using your cerebral cortex, thinking higher thoughts, more of a wise mind type of scenario, a resourced self, your adult self, that can come along and begin to recognize different thought patterns that are serving you and that are not serving you. You have to separate the wheat from the chaff in your mind. You have to discover what thoughts are serving me in my mind. What thoughts are keeping me stuck that I am having? What thoughts are propelling me forward? Now, I feel I need to interject, because this is across the board. Everyone in life has troubles, difficulties, hardships, challenges, situations. We all have things to overcome. But to someone with an incompetency schema, they will either not try, or try lower than their true capacity, or they will be afraid, or they will give up, they won't try at all, or they will always anticipate gloom and doom. And that is the worst feeling. Like everywhere around the corner, when you have this victim mentality, this learned helplessness, you see gloom and doom everywhere, and all the reasons why you can't. Because all of your thought processes are all lined up. Your brain is so used to not getting your needs met, not getting what you need, not being mirrored, not being valued, not being appreciative, not being able to do it, because all of those things turn into a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the more you think you can't, the more you can't, and then you think you can't. So it's this snowball effect of it. Just what you think about yourself is what happens. So what you have to begin to do is become aware of what you're thinking using your wise mind. And this takes skill. All of these behaviors, victim mentality and learned helplessness, are learned behaviors. They are not inherent to your system. You weren't born with these behaviors. You were taught to behave by your environment, by your nurture throughout life. So these are all behaviors that can be unlearned and relearned, because our brains are plastic through elderly, through when we're elderly. So you can recalibrate your central nervous system using meditation and different types of processes. And you can also learn these new behavioral techniques, skills, and tools to help you overcome victim mentality. As you begin to grow and heal, you will find that you have more space and more ability to be more resilient. Because the opposite, I would think, of victim mentality is resiliency. So it's one thing to be down for one day because bad things are happening to you. But it's another thing to stay down for a month or a year or 10 years or whatever. So you see, when you are able to pull yourself out of victim mentality, you can take yourself to higher levels of progress, happiness, joy, and success. So how do I explain this? So we have victim mentality, which means it's just learned helplessness. Look that up in Google. Look it up in Google Images. Learned helplessness. There's so much on the topic. You feel like you cannot do it, and you learned you could not do it, and so you don't do it. And so it's a Sisyphean cycle. It continues. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then you have learned helplessness, victim mentality, and you can't see victim mentality. That's the problem. If we could see it, then we could solve it. But victim mentality really attaches to your identity. So that's why meditation is so good, and really listening to your self-talk and journaling your self-talk and listening to the things that you say to yourself and beginning to have a dialogue with the inner critic. That's why this helps you to develop your wise mind so that you can begin to reparent that part of yourself that tends to give up every time. I am absolutely 100% certain that victim mentality and learned helplessness are a real feeling. I mean, I have felt it. It feels as real as you can imagine. And it's really hard to see it. It's really hard to externalize it. But using imagination, using visualization techniques, you can begin to notice it and separate yourself from it and just begin to look at it. Just look at this. What is my mentality? And once you start finding that string, you can pull the string and it's just like a sweater. It just starts going all the way through the sweater, and you've got this whole long string, and you figure it all out. And then you can go higher and higher in understanding learned helplessness and victim mentality. So victim mentality is a real feeling. I believe that is attached to toxic shame. So once you can release yourself from toxic shame through grief work and awareness and meditation, releasing yourself from toxic shame helps to free yourself, give yourself some space for your wise mind, your higher self, your adult self to begin to reparent and nurture that child inside of your psyche that feels incompetent and incapable. And to begin to use cognitive behavioral techniques to question the validity of some of your false negative core beliefs, that false self that you've had to wear in order to fit in with the family system that you grew up in, or the cultural system. And you can begin to question those beliefs and begin to solve those problems. Okay? So solving the problems. So one of the cool things about overcoming victim mentality and shedding your negative maladaptive schemas, shedding those maladaptive schemas and really questioning those schemas and beginning to chip away at them one thought at a time and rethinking, because our mind will try to be right even if it's to your detriment. So you have to reprogram your mind by questioning, is that true? Is that thought really true? And what am I thinking right now? I know that I'm feeling negatively. What am I thinking, and how can I rise higher than this emotional experience that I'm having right now? How can I go to a higher level of emotional experience so that I can solve my problems with aplomb? So I think that's APLOMB. I think that's a word, isn't it? So anyway, how can I problem solve? So that's kind of where it's a beautiful thing when you take that original thought and you begin to play with it and tinker with it and think it through and begin to ask questions about it. So you're aware that you have a thought that is in victim mode. And then you begin to say, wait a minute, is this true? And is there anything, is this always true? Is this true for everyone? That's CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Is this true for everyone? And does it have to be true for me? And this is not something that happens overnight. This is a process. It's little thoughts like, I never can clean my closet. I never can. No, I never can. And you say, is that true? Can I never clean my closet? And you begin to see the big picture. Because remember, a child's mind, and that's really the mode you're in if you're in victim mentality, a child's mind is very myopic and very small and has a lot of tunnel vision and has a lot of black and white thinking and doesn't have a lot of room for gray and doesn't have all the colors of the rainbow. And so there's so many options. You don't have to be someone who doesn't clean their closet. You can become the most organized person in the planet. You can become, what's her name, Marie Kondo. You can become whomever you want to be. You can overcome all of your obstacles. These are just obstacles. So instead of seeing obstacles as your limitations, begin to see obstacles from your adult perspective, from your resourced perspective. Remember, you're an adult. You can drive a car, hopefully. You can make your own dinner. You can do a cartwheel if you want. You can learn how to do a cartwheel. You can do all sorts of things. You can get a better job. The sky is the limit. Your options are completely open for problem solving. So begin to say, is this true, or can I solve this problem? And when you get to a place of problem solving mode, you will find that your problems are solvable, that these challenges we can overcome them. And those things that we cannot change, we can accept them, and then we can begin to work on ourselves and allow God to work through us, through the situation, to teach us what we're here on the planet to learn and to help others as we go. So this works for me in this way. Like I'll think, oh my gosh, I can't handle that. And then there's a little voice that says, but maybe you can. Is it true that you cannot? Are we sure? But maybe you can solve it. Maybe you can't solve it today. Maybe you don't have all the answers today, but you do have the wherewithal, the ways, the means, the energy, the positivity, the ability to figure out how to solve the problem or to accept it and become greater because of the problem. So everything, for so long, all the problems that I had in front of me were so overwhelming and daunting. And until I was able to stand up and say, I'm not a victim. I am a victor. I am a survivor, and I am a thriver. Now, I may be a target of a smear campaign, and I may be a target of other people's abuse, even in adulthood, or I may be a target of harsh life realities and, oppression. However, I have what it takes to solve the problems within my control. So this becomes the difference between having an internal locus of control versus an external locus of control where things are happening to you. Instead, you're making things happen and things are happening for you. And you're controlling your life. And so that's the switch from victim mentality to internal locus of control begins by awareness, questioning, and then reparenting, rethinking, reteaching, relearning, and building stronger synapses for problem solving, awareness, and acceptance. And knowing that you're going to succeed in this trial, in this situation, because that's your new plan, that's your new go-to, that's your new process, and that's your new self-fulfilling prophecy, is speaking to yourself in ways that progress you forward. Yeah, I think I can do that. That's a problem, and it's a big one, but I think if I chip away at that problem a little bit at a time, that I will be successful, because I've been successful over here, successful in this, and I always overcome. So I think I can handle this closet or whatever. That's just an example, because I have a great closet, by the way. Anyway, so that is your podcast for today. I hope it's helpful. If you like it, please share. Please come back to the channel. Love you guys. Subscribe. And I'm not going anywhere. I'm always going to be here for you. Until next time, this is Jenna Ryan, and I'll talk to you soon.